All, this is Dr. Mobeen Sayed from drbeen.com. Welcome to one more show. I hope you had a great weekend. Thank you very much for the questions about my health. I am, as you can tell, I am feeling better. Slight congestion, some tiredness. The PCR test result came back negative, but I'm still taking the medicines. Generally, I am fine. Oxygen saturation has been throughout 3 days now, has been 98, 99, 97, and so on. So this is my state. I think I am doing fine. Let's start our discussion. And thank you very much for everybody. There have been folks who have actually, for example, Thomas from here in Cupertino, he's a cool bean. He has actually left bromhexin for me in his mailbox, which my wife would go and pick it up. Then there are so many folks who have donated, and especially once again, Margaret, thank you very much for your generous donation again today. And then there are so many prayers, there are so many wishes. Thank you very much. So I am really grateful, and if I continue to talk about that, then I'll start tearing up. So I would change the topic. So we're gonna talk about the Johnson & Johnson. Interesting for me, here is my takeaway from the whole paper that I studied, and I would present that to you in a few seconds. My takeaway, my impression, number one, the efficacy, I did not see that to be that great, but still it is efficacious, which is good, 66% and above. Number two, from severe disease, it does not help that much, but still it does help. So I think 70% or 80%. So compared to the other vaccines where we said 100% protection from severe disease, it doesn't have that kind of protection. And thirdly, from death, it has COVID-related death. It has if you look at it one way, then it says 100% protection. And then if you look at it in another way, then maybe not. So that is kind of little concerning for me. The other thing that was interesting for me to see was that the side effects, as I kept going through the cases for the side effects, generally the side effects look lesser and they look more in the younger population. But when you look at serious adverse effects, then there are so many of them that I was becoming seriously concerned that if they said, hey, you would get Johnson & Johnson, will I be that comfortable? I have been very bullish on, for example, Moderna or Pfizer, but this one, as I kept reading, the more I read, the more I became scared of it. So maybe they presented the data in this way, or maybe there is a concern here. So this is the basic takeaway for me. Another important thing that was my takeaway was that for the immunocompromised, for example, HIV patients, it actually didn't have much to offer. Similarly, for immunosuppressed by, let's say, by medication, it also did not have much benefit in them either. This is compared to the other vaccines where I think that they had still better things to offer than here. And finally, most of the adverse reactions, for example, pain at the site of injection or fever or myalgias, most of the adverse reactions were more common in the younger population than in the older population. So this is the basic general takeaway which got stuck in my mind when I was reading it. So now let's go over this. Maybe I am not right in looking at it this way. So as we study it together, maybe we can balance my opinion out, or maybe there is a problem. And I had actually prepared to show you what I have been taking during this time. And I'll show you that, I think. Let's do that near the end so I don't waste too much of your time. So let's start. This is the paper, Vaccine and Related Biological Products Advisory Committee meeting, February 26, 2021. This is the document that was presented in that meeting, and based on this, they have provided the approval. So we're going to go through this document, quite an elaborate document as usual. And so we will see it as we go through this, and we will look at my illustrations as well. So let's start from my illustrations. So here is how this vaccine looks. Type, this is an adenovirus-based vaccine, AD26 virus. It is a replication deficient virus, meaning this virus cannot replicate. So it is just a vehicle. You can think of it as a lipid nanoparticle. So all it is doing is it is bringing in a DNA of the spike protein into our cells. Then it would inject that DNA of the spike protein into our nucleus, where that DNA will be converted into messenger RNA. That messenger RNA will be going out of the nucleus, go to the ribosome, where it will help make spike proteins. Those spike proteins will be shredded by endosomes and then presented on the cell surface as small antigen particles, which will then help train our immune system to attack such things when they actually arrive as the new viruses. The DNA that was injected into our nucleus will also be then shredded away by DNases enzymes, and that would go away too. So that is the basic mechanism. Because I have done this discussion in detail before, that is why I just briefly said it. The vaccine name is AD26. So AD26 is for the adenovirus 26, COV is for COVID, and S is for the spike protein. The DNA that it carries will make a stabilized version of the spike protein. Number of shot, this is the beauty of this vaccine. It is one shot vaccine, and that one shot has 5 multiplied with 10 raised to power 10 adenovirus particles, and that is about 0.5 milliliter per dose. It arrives in vials which have 5 doses in them. It is made from or made in PERC6 fetal cells, clones or copies. And we have done this discussion as well, that the PER are the cells that have been cloned from an aborted fetus. And these are the property of Janssen, which is a subsidiary of Johnson & Johnson. Storage, 2 degree to 8 degree centigrade, or 36 degree Fahrenheit to 46 degree Fahrenheit. This is refrigeration temperature. It can actually survive fine for 6 hours at the room temperature, or it can survive fine in the refrigeration for 6 months. So that is a pretty convenient way to store and to transport. Availability, it has been approved, and now it is going to become available in the US at least. No preservatives, approved for 18 and plus, so not younger than 18. Deaths, there have been 7 deaths, all in the placebo group. So 7 COVID-related deaths. There have been other deaths as well that were in the vaccinated group as well. But COVID-related deaths have been 7, and all in the placebo group. If we look at this data as we are seeing here, then it should mean that 100% protection from COVID-related death, although data has some fudge factor in it. But generally, it is fine to look at it this way. The phase 3 trial was actually done in multiple countries. A total of about 40,000 participants are in that trial. Out of those 40,000, by this January, I believe 22nd, they were able to collect data from a slightly lesser number. So 39,321. This is Luffy fighting over there. So 39,321 participants by January 22nd of 2021. So this last month. And the efficacy, if you see here, vaccinated people were 19,514, placebo 19,514. There were 116 people in the vaccinated group who became infected by COVID versus 348 people in the placebo group who became infected. And so that ratio is 66.9% efficacy for the vaccine. This is within 14 days of the first shot. If we take 28 days of the first shot, then the efficacy is 66.1%. So again, not a huge difference. The demography, we'll see the demography in detail, but generally 60 years and over, about 30%. 18 to 24 year, I should have not 24, 18 to 50, 18 to 58, I believe. It is 18 to 24. They were 20%, and then 25 to 59 were 50%. So that was the number of, that was the breakdown of the population. Now let's look at the composition of the vaccine itself. So let's see the composition, or I should have done this as well. So this is drbeen.com. This is the FDA issues. All of these links are present in the description. FDA issues emergency use authorization for third COVID-19 vaccine. As much as we're kind of happy that this is a third vaccine, this vaccine is more scary than the other two for me. Although I am really celebrating that this is just one shot, but I'm not. I'm scared of this vaccine, and I'll show you why. So this is the FDA's page. This is the this is again on the FDA site. This is a PDF, which is fact sheet for healthcare providers administering vaccine. Then there is another PDF, which is fact sheet for recipients and caregivers. So if you are receiving it, then it is a fact sheet for you. This is Johnson & Johnson and their various data points and their announcements. And finally, the document that we are going through is this document. This is the link. It is in the description as well. So with this, let's go back to the document now. If you see here, we've talked about this one. We've talked about this one. And I wanted to talk about page 12, composition of the vaccine. So that is very important. Hey, Luffy. So if you see here, the vaccine is colorless to slightly yellow. Luffy. Slightly yellow, clear to very opalescent, sterile suspension for intramuscular injection. The vaccine consists of a replication incompetent. Luffy. Replication incompetent, meaning the adenovirus that is given to us as a vaccine cannot replicate anymore. So let me see if I can get Luffy here. So in this little window, you can see Luffy. So somebody was saying that, hey, I am new to the channel and I want to see Luffy. So here is Luffy. Luffy, why are you making so much noise? Okay, so here is Luffy. Okay, back here, sorry. So if you see here, this orange part, so they say that there are no preservatives in the vaccine. However, there are other pieces, for example, citric acid, trisodium citrate, ethanol, 2-hydroxypropyl B cyclodextrin, polysorbate, 80, sodium chloride, sodium hydroxide, and hydrochloric acid. Interestingly, from their data, there has been no allergic reaction to the vaccine as has been for the other vaccines. So that is interesting. No allergic reactions. Continuing on, back here, the efficacy endpoint. So what were they measuring with the vaccine? Number one, can the vaccine prevent moderate to severe critical infection? Within 14 days, that is how they started. But then they amended their primary efficacy endpoint and also included after 28 days. So after 14 days and after 28 days, and that is how they are reporting this. Then the secondary endpoint was, can the vaccine prevent severe to critical infection, medical interventions need, for example, need for oxygen, need for ventilation, and can it prevent COVID-related death? So that was these were the endpoints. This is interesting, the demography. So this is on page 20. I wanted, why I have the page numbers there, I wanted if any of you wanted to go over the document, then they can actually see where the data is. So here, this is the demographic data. So if you see here, this data is interesting. Here is how it is interesting. Number one, women were 44.5%. The rest were, of course, men or other. Whites were 62%. African Americans, 17.2%. American Indians, 8.3%, Asians, 3.5%, Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders, 0.3%, multiracial, 5.4%, Hispanics and Latinos, 45.1%. Again, this is not cumulative. If you cumulate that, this would become 150%. This is just that they were mix and match in there. Then this is also important, that people with comorbidities, there were 39.9%, or about 40% of the people receiving vaccine or placebo, but the 40% of the group had at least one comorbidities. 46.7% of the participants were from US, 17.3% were from Brazil, 12.7% from South Africa, and you would see in the data that the vaccine's efficacy was the least in South Africa. And another thing that was interesting is all deaths that occurred in placebo group were all in South Africa. And 23.3% were 5 other Latin American countries. So that was the distribution of the vaccine. Comorbidities. This is important because there are some comorbidities for which there was not much efficacy. So if you see here, this is page 23. This is the page. So here, look at the comorbidities, and if you have any comorbidity, check it out. What is the percentage? Asthma, cancer, cerebrovascular disease, cystic fibrosis, chronic kidney disease, COPD, serious heart conditions, HIV infection. So I'm sure that they're going to say the status was not collected for participants with no comorbidities or no medical history. And secondly, if you would see, the vaccine actually did not help HIV patients. Hypertension, immunocompromised state. Again, there are HIV infection patients were 601 vaccinated and 617 not vaccinated. They still, both groups developed similar number of infections. And immunocompromised, 43 and 36, I think the number is too small, but still you would see that vaccine did not help much. Liver disease, keep this one in mind as well, 103 and 103, and you would see that the effect was not, I don't remember that effect was great. Other one are here, diabetes is here as well, and we'll see that. So these are the comorbidities, for at least one was present. Now, efficacy. Efficacy is shown here on page 25. This is the efficacy. So first of all, my opinion, this efficacy is lesser than what we have seen with Pfizer, Moderna. We've been seeing 94.5% and 92 point something. It is only the AstraZeneca that has that weird time-based efficacy changes and then dose-based efficacy changes, for which people still hammer me to this day to say I am unfair to AstraZeneca. I think AstraZeneca itself is just, I don't understand the data very well. Here, if you see, the efficacy is 66%. So check this out. All participants, 19,514 developed 116 infections. This is the vaccinated group. The placebo group had 348. So this ratio is 66.9% effective towards the vaccine. If you go 28 days after, so this second part of the next three columns are for the 28 days. Here, 66 people, so exclude those who were already infected, and now the number of people left still to be observed are lesser. Out of them, 66 more, you can say, after 28 days, developed infection in the vaccinated group versus 193 more on the placebo side. This efficacy comes down to 66.1. Not much difference, 66.9 versus 66.1, or 66 versus 67 almost. Check this out, the age group, 18 to 59 age group, the efficacy is 63.7% in 14 days, 14 days after the vaccine. And 28 days after the vaccine, 66.1%. It improves. In the age group 60 years and over, within the first 14 days, 76.3% efficacy, which is excellent. They are at a higher risk and they develop a higher percentage of higher efficacy as well. Then 28 days later, the efficacy is once again 66.2%. So that is, again, I know that FDA's bar was greater than 60% is fine. So they have crossed that bar. But this is also just like AstraZeneca. Remember, AstraZeneca, in one case 62%, in another case 90 something percent, overall cumulative 72%. And now they're saying that, hey, first dose and then within 1 month lower efficacy, after 3 months better efficacy. It's a similar, not similar thing, but it is interesting for me to see why is this after 14 days in elderly. I shouldn't say elderly, 60 is not elderly, 70 is not elderly, so we're all young. But in 60 and above, 76.3% within 14 days, and then 66.2% after 28 days. Is it declining that fast? So I'm going to continue to move. So that is what I have written here as well. Then interesting subgroup analysis. So keep an eye here. This is page number 27. So if I go to page 27, subgroup analysis. This is interesting for me. So if you see here, male, 68.8% efficacy in 14 days, then 69.8%, female, 63.4 and 60. So women had lesser efficacy with this compared to men. Age group, and once again, if you see here, as the age for 14 days, as the age increases, the efficacy actually increases. 18 to 64% years of age, 64%. Greater than 65, 76% efficacy. Greater than 75, 89% efficacy. On the other hand, if you see after 28 days, then 18 to 64 is 65%, almost the same as 14 days. Greater than 65 years of age, it was 76% after 14 days. But after 28 days, 68%, 68.6%. So 1 and 6, almost 7% reduced effect. And after the 75, the data is too small after 28 days to be effective, to be of consequence, so they did not talk about it. Then check this out, the race and the ethnicity. American Indians, see their effectivity in them, 49.4% and 31.7%. This, from FDA's point of view, if you look at this subgroup, then this vaccine is actually not effective in them. So if somebody says to an American Indian or Alaskan person to say, take this vaccine, at least from the data, this vaccine does not rise up to the bar that FDA had set. it rises up to that bar overall, but not for this subgroup. Similarly, if you see here, Asians, after 14 days of vaccination, 54% efficacy. After 28 days, 74% efficacy. So maybe after 28 days, so that means if Asians get the vaccine today, then they should be very, very careful for 28 days. After that, there is 74% efficacy. But before that, the efficacy bar is below the FDA's bar. Black or African American, this is a good news because they are at high risk, and 63% in 14 days and 68.6% in 28 days. That is good. Native Hawaiian and others, not enough data. Whites, 67.6% at 14 days and 66.2% at 28 days. So that is fine. Multiple races, that is fine as well. Ethnicity, once again, if you see here, Hispanics, good. Not Hispanics, good. Northern American, 74 and 72, good. Southern African, South Africa, 52 and 64, so barely there. Latin America, 64 and 61, so kind of barely there. So that was interesting for me to see that way. Then is the comorbidity. It is similarly interesting. I would actually request you to go over this document and specifically look at the subgroup analysis and the ethnicity analysis, comorbidity analysis, and you yourself or your loved one, put them on that chart and see how this vaccine is effective for you. Because this may be an issue, for example, for American Indians, this vaccine is not useful at all. So comorbidity, let's look at that. So this is page number 29. So here, so if I start from here, asthma, again, look at the numbers. These are tiny numbers, but asthma, 87% efficacy. After 28 days, they didn't have enough data to say that, so nothing written here, which is fine. 87% efficacy in asthmatics is good. Cancer, not enough data. Chronic kidney disease, not enough data. COPD, enough data, 81.5%. So which is a good thing. Serious heart disease, 76.1% and 79.4% after 28 days. Good. Look at the HIV. Number of people are 467 and 498. And the efficacy is lesser than placebo, minus 4.8%. Giving the vaccine somehow created the risk of infection, which is weird. But anyways, that's what happened. So 5 and 5, so equal, no change. Then after 28 days, 47.5%, so about half. Again, we'll take it that about half, but it does not go to FDA's bar. So that means if I have HIV, I would try to find that vaccine that has a better, at least more than 60% efficacy for HIV. Hypertension, 63% after 14 days and 35% efficacy after 28 days. So just realize what is happening is there is a cohort here. For example, let's say 2,000 people here, 2,000 people here. And then they vaccinated them, 2,000 not vaccinated. These 4,000 people are observed for 14 days, and the number of people who became infected are removed from that cohort, and now the remaining cohort is then checked for the remaining another 14 days, and somehow this data is just weird. It does not look reliable in terms of some mechanism. To me, it looks more just strange. Although because it is statistically significant, that is why they're putting it there. And here, if you see here, 35.7%. And even if you look at their confidence interval, minus 45 to plus 72. So meaning it can be minus 45% to plus 72%, which actually means not significant. So strange. Immunocompromised from blood transplant. 2 and 0, so not enough data. One is 38 folks were vaccinated, 33 were not. We have looked at smaller studies too. So if we try to give it some value, it actually created risk. But again, data was not significant, so they haven't done the analysis. Similarly, after 28 days, in the vaccinated group, there was one person who got infected, and in the placebo, there was 0. So once again, data is not significant, so they didn't do the analysis. Liver disease, 1 and 2, so not significant. After 28 days, 1 and 0, not significant. Neurological disorders, same thing, not significant. Obesity, 51 after 14 days, 51 in the vaccinated, 151 in placebo, so 66% efficacy versus 65%, so that is fine. At least these are comparable numbers. These kind of numbers make me really wonder, 63% here and then 35% here. Continuing, diabetes, type 2 diabetes, 52% after 14 days and 23% after 28 days. So do you think it is actually really useful? So type 2 diabetes, again, we can say it reduces it by 50%, fine. So it does reduce some risk. But if we have a vaccine that can do better than this, then we should take that vaccine. So that means if I was there for type 2 diabetics, for folks with who are immunocompromised, for folks who have HIV, or folks who have cancer, chronic kidney disease, I will not give them this vaccine. I would have the orders out to say, this vaccine not for this subgroup, give them Moderna or give them Pfizer or give them some other vaccine that has proven to be efficacious in that group. This is why it is interesting to look at this data, because when we say overall 72% efficacy, let's start administering it to everyone, then we kind of hide and cover and mask these kind of details. Although the data is there, but not everybody looks at it. Continuing. Then severe and critical cases, that when the vaccination is done, will people become severely ill or not? So if you see the data here, after 14 days, in the vaccinated group, there were 14 people who became severely ill, and there were 16 people who became severely ill in placebo. So that efficacy was 76.7%. After 28 days, in the remaining group now, 5 people became severely ill in the vaccinated group, and 34% people became severely ill in placebo group. That is 85% efficacy. So still better, but I think in the previous other vaccines that we saw, it seemed like their efficacy for severely ill patients was better. So this is, what I missed was, so you know that I was more focused on long haulers. So what I missed was the actual live discussion by the committee where they talk about it, that, hey, is it good or not good, or should we approve it or not approve it? I just missed it to see what their point of views were. If I was in that group, I would have said that I'm not going to approve this one. Needing medical intervention. So this is the next efficacy point, that will there be people who have been vaccinated and still need oxygen or ventilation? So if you see here, in a way, after 28 days, they say that this is 100% not needed, meaning 100% protection. And I'll show you the table, the way they have laid out the data. After 14 days, there is not 100% protection. So essentially what they're saying is, after vaccination for 28 days, please be very, 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 very careful, because one can still become infected. The chances are lesser and still end up on a ventilator. Then deaths, 7 deaths due to COVID, all in placebo group, all in South Africa, all had comorbidities. 1 death in the vaccinated group due to COVID. There are other deaths that are not COVID after 10 days of the first shot. And because they were counting from 14 days and 28 days, that is why this is not counted, that, hey, the body's immune system was not even ready yet. So that I can understand. Body's immune system is not ready till then. So let's just quickly look at that data as well. So these are the severe cases, and this is the data that I kind of showed you the overall picture. Now, then is the efficacy by country. This is also important, that if you are not in the US, or even if you are in the US, see the efficacy by the country. It is on page 37. I'm going to go there. So I think this is the one. So if you see here, United States, moderate to severe, 74% protection and 72% protection after 28 days. So the first number is the 14 days and the other number is 28 days. So good, not bad. Severe to critical, 78% protection in 14 days and then 85% protection after 28 days. South Africa, moderate to severe, 52% protection in the 14 days. So below the FDA's bar, 64% protection after 28 days, above the FDA bar. So that means be careful for 28 days. Severe to critical patients, 14 days, 73%, so good, and then 81% good. This vaccine just scares me that after taking the vaccine, you still continue to feel that, hey, I can catch it and I can become severe and I can die. Brazil, moderate to severe, 66%, and after 28 days, 68%. Severe to critical or severe or critical, 81% and 87%. So that is interesting, good numbers. And then they don't have the data for the rest. So that is interesting as well. Then is the adverse reactions. Interestingly, the normal adverse reactions like pain on the site of injection or swelling or redness are actually less, more frequent in youngers, but generally less. Even systemic side effects, for example, fever or myalgias, are less and more common again in the youngsters. However, the serious side effects, they caused me to become a little concerned, and I'm going to walk over those in a second. So here, if you see, this is the safety data, and here are various data points. I have a list here, which we can just very quickly look at it. So 50.2% of the people vaccinated had local adverse reactions. So half people said, I had pain or swelling or redness on the site of injection, versus 19.4% in the placebo. So not bad. Injection site pain was the most common, then erythema, that is redness, and then swelling of the area. So not bad. Systemic headache was the most common, and that was 38.9% in vaccinated, 23.7% in placebo. So to me, it looks like there is some psychological effect as well, because placebo should not develop headache after getting a placebo. Fatigue, 38.2%, 21.5% in placebo. Myalgia, 33.2%, 12.7%. Nausea, 14.2 versus 9. Fever, 9% and 0.6. So headache and fatigue more common. So with this, now let's look at some of the more the severe adverse reactions. So if you see here, So this I just went over. Then they have gone over case by case for the severe one. So I want to show those here. So if you see here, embolic and thrombotic events. So embolism, or the small blood pieces, clots, and thrombosis, again clots. In the thrombosis, a blood clot in place. Embolism is a blood clot that is moving in the blood. So they said it demonstrated slight numerical imbalance towards the vaccinated. And the difference was 15 events in 14 participants compared to 10 events in 10 participants. So on placebo, there were 10 people who developed 10 events of thrombosis and embolism. In the vaccinated side, there were 14 people who developed it, and one of the persons developed twice. And we would see that later on. Then if you continue on, transverse sinus thrombus. So this is the person who developed the thrombotic event twice. So transverse sinus got thrombosed, then they lysed it, improved it, then it became thrombosed again. So poor person had to go through that. So this is one case. Then there was a case where pulmonary embolism on day 3 following vaccination in a woman. So she had embolism, or a clot got stuck in the lung system on the 3rd day after the vaccination. I want to balance it out. Although as much as it scared me, I want to balance it out that these are the events out of 20,000 people who were vaccinated. These are, I believe, 14 patients. But of course, it is a concern because these 14 people can be any of us as well. So kind of a little scary. So pulmonary embolism. A 52-year-old male with obesity experienced deep vein thrombosis on day 27 following the vaccine. A 63-year-old male with type 2 diabetes, hypertension, and osteoarthritis experienced a DVT, deep vein thrombus, on day 23 following vaccination, and so on. So they keep going. So that is, of course, look at this, a 49-year-old female. She developed hemiparesis, that is one half side paralysis of the body, on day 28. The event was considered serious by the investigators. No laboratory or imaging results were reported. The event was unresolved and ongoing on day 51. The event was not considered related to the study product by the investigator or the sponsor. So the company, Johnson & Johnson, didn't think that vaccine did it, and the FDA's committee didn't think it was a vaccine, or whoever was the investigator. Then tinnitus was reported in 6 vaccine recipients compared to nobody in placebo. So tinnitus is the ringing in the ear. So here, if you see this person, an additional event of tinnitus was reported in the clinical development of this. Hearing improved, and the event was resolved by day 69. The event was not considered related to the study. Then angioedema, then wheezing, then arthritis, peripheral neuropathy. So the peripheral neuropathy in the FAST demonstrated a numerical imbalance event reported among 0.21% of vaccine. So that is 45 people developed neuropathy, and one of them, or maybe 2 of them, had more than 1 events, versus placebo, where there were 35 people who developed peripheral neuropathy. This is interesting. Immediate adverse events, meaning anaphylaxis right after the vaccine. Immediate unsolicited reactions occurring within 30 minutes of vaccination were infrequent and occurred in 0.2% participant in both the vaccine and the placebo. So that could be a psychological thing that people sometimes just faint afterwards. There were no reports of anaphylaxis immediately following the vaccination. So that is interesting. And I've already talked about death before. So this is the discussion. Made me a little bit concerned. I do not know how you see it. If I take Dr. Corey's point of view, again, he was not specifically talking about Johnson and Johnson, but he was generally saying that, hey, why not just administer as much as we can to at least save as many, whatever, even if 50%. So I think that seems fine. But at the same time, this one, going over this document, scared me. I was not scared by others. Embol says, what was the placebo made of? And that is what I kept trying to find out, and I did not see. So let me just check it out once more. Placebo. I'm sure that somewhere they have on pregnancies as well. There were 8 pregnancies after in the group, 4 in the vaccinated and 4 in placebo, all occurring after the vaccination. I'm looking at the placebo. Let's see if I can. Placebo. So Embol, I think I'll have to search it. I could not find that what is exactly the placebo. Is it saline? Is it some other injection? Okay, I'll do some research to see what is the placebo in this one. So what do you think? Samina says, Salam. So if you like, I can stop here so that this particular talk stays. It is long, but still stays small. And then we can do chit chat for a few more minutes. I'm a little tired, easily tired. So I'll probably beg leave earlier. So why not we do this? Please like, subscribe, and share. And please also, if you would like to support this work, there are links in the description. One is to become my patron, another is to buy me coffees, and another is to just support this channel in general. So thank you very much, and I would see you in 5 minutes.